bring in Republican presidential candidate Carly Fiorina. Ms. Fiorina, thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Early Christmas wishes to you.
Thanks.
So, last night, what did you see on that stage for yourself in terms of what came out of you and what came out of others? What should matter to voters today?
Well, you know, I am a tested leader, and I think that's what we need in the White House. And I think a lot of what viewers saw last night is why they're tired of politics. It's why 80% of the American people now think we have a professional political class that cares more about its ambition, its privilege, its position, than getting something done. I mean, there was a debate about immigration, an argument about immigration between 3 first-term senators. And we've been talking about immigration for 25 years. We've been talking about the border for 25 years. With all due respect to Donald Trump, he didn't bring this issue up. We talked about it last election. We talked about it the last 4 elections, and yet it's not gotten fixed. So politicians talk, leaders act.
So you thought that sparring between Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz was not helpful. It didn't advance any conversation.
Well, they have their opinions, and their supporters will think what they think. I guess what I'm saying is politicians have been arguing about all of these subjects, but particularly immigration, for 25 years. And it remains an unsolved problem. And I think part of the reason for that is because lawyers, politicians, they argue about laws. That's what they do. But the American people are close to, they're so frustrated. You see that in all the polls because they don't want the arguing. They'd actually like the problem solved.
Right. And is there a simple solution to immigration?
Well, we have to secure the border. You know, this isn't rocket science, folks. Securing the border takes what? Money, manpower, technology, but mostly it takes leadership and political willpower. And we have to fix the legal immigration system. This is the most sophisticated technological nation on the planet. And we can't create an employer verification system that works? Of course we can. But our bureaucracy in government has become completely inept. We know that. The people know it. It's why 75% of them think the government's inept and corrupt, and they're right.
The flip side is that people will say, yeah, the system is what it is. It's intractable, it's difficult, but the idea of changing it wholesale is equally as absurd as the situation as it stands
Well,
today.
that's what the punditries always say. But look, I've laid out a blueprint for how we change it. There's 6 points. And what I would like is for voters to hold me accountable for getting that blueprint done in the first couple years of my first term. It starts with reforming the tax code, but it also starts with going to zero-based budgeting. What is that? It's where you can examine every single dollar, cut any dollar, move any dollar. By the way, the political class hates that idea because
so
it takes, well, let's just start with the fact that there is a bill sitting on the U.S. House floor to get it done, but of course nobody wants to vote on it because it will gore lots of oxes.
So how do you make them vote on it?
So I'm going to go into the Oval Office every single week. I'm going to ask the American people to take out their smartphones. And I will say, do you think we finally ought to force government to justify every dollar so we can cut any dollar and move any dollar? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. The technology for a citizen government exists. There's an app for this, actually. We need to use technology to re-engage citizens in the process of their government. The political class has ruled this country, along with an inept, corrupt government bureaucracy, for far too long. People know it, and they're tired of it.
Speaking of technology, you had a moment last night. You know, you always get high marks in these debates for sort of slicing through illogic and giving kind of a no-nonsense answer. And you had this moment about technology last night where you said, every parent in the country knows how to check their child's Facebook. Let's listen to that moment, because it was about terrorism.
We now learn that DHS says we can't check their social media. For heaven's sakes, every parent in America is checking social media, and every employer is as well, but our government can't do it. The bureaucratic procedures are so far behind.
The crowd liked that moment, that we should be checking, particularly after San Bernardino. But, of course, there are problems.
Better to check it before.
Yes, before. Check before. In the aftermath of San Bernardino. But, of course, the devil's in the details. These weren't postings, public postings. These were direct messages. How are you supposed to figure out what terrorists are up to when they're using encryption, as came up last night?
They were not using encryption. In this, we are confusing several things. Okay, so yes, terrorists are using encryption. Yes, terrorists now, ISIS has a help desk on their website for how to make your messages disappear. You don't think we have more sophisticated technologies in this country than ISIS? Of course we do, but we're not using them. We are not engaging with them. Every employer in this country has figured out, with people's permission, how to check social postings. Our government has become inept, sometimes because it is politically correct, sometimes because bureaucrats are driven by ideology, but sometimes because bureaucracies are always behind the times. When technology moves on 5 generations and bureaucrats and politicians are still fighting the fights of 2002, we're going to keep losing.
How do you deal with the fact that the practicalities often make solutions that sound simple not simple? So DHS will say, we check social media, we do it all the time. We have more people doing it.
They didn't. They admitted they didn't.
They'll say, we do. In this case, with the woman, the wife, she was on Facebook under a pseudonym, speaking Urdu and using direct messages. How would that be something that's perceptible to anybody?
Well, if our government cannot figure out how to adequately people who are coming into this country using the technology tools that our enemies are using, then our government is incompetent. Look, I am not saying that this is not a somewhat complex procedure. What I am saying is people do it all the time, but our government does not. We have to face up to the reality here. We have gigantic bureaucracies. We have a political class that spends its time arguing, and the result of that is ineptitude and corruption. And 75% of the American people see that. It is why they are so frustrated and so angry. And it is why we need a different kind of leadership.
Where does your campaign go from here? You often get a big poll bump after your debate performances that people, again, give a lot of kudos to. What do you think happens next?
Well, I'm going to go have a campaign rally here in Nevada next, and then I'm going to Iowa. That's what I think happens next.
You know what happens next.
That's right. I'm going to keep campaigning.
Right.
Where is the point of no return, as you see in this process? With poll numbers, or are you going to just put them to the side, see what happens in the votes? How many votes do you go without success before you reestablish?
Oh wow, you're like declaring an end to my candidacy.
Not at all.
I think we're just getting started. Look, here's the truth. Going into this debate, I was tied in national polls with Jeb Bush, who has spent $50 million on air, and I haven't spent a dime. So I have gone further, faster than anyone imagined. Here's what I believe. People watching that debate need to think about the next debate, next fall, where there are 2 podiums on the stage. Behind one is going to be Hillary Clinton. Who do we want behind another? Someone who's never made an executive decision, someone who insults women, someone who talks a good game but hasn't ever led, or do we want someone who can actually beat her? And I think people want to win. They know we have to take our country back, and they understand that is going to require real leadership. Not talk, results.
Carla Fiorina, thanks so much for